You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
I don't know if there's anybody looking at this program today, this worship service today, who's ever felt overlooked. Have you ever felt overlooked? Felt like people spent more time looking at your brother or your sister than they did at you? Well, guess what? You're not alone. In the Bible, in Genesis chapter 5, we read about a man who for many years, I think, has been overlooked. He doesn't get the attention of his brothers. We know about Cain and Abel, but do you know about Seth? I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about Seth today. If you want to follow along with me, you can pull down your Bible off the shelf and open it up to Genesis chapter 5. And listen to what it tells us about a man who, for many of us, is overlooked. I'm going to be honest. I've never heard a preacher preach about Seth. And I've been in church my whole life. We talk about Cain, we talk about Abel, but after Cain kills his brother Abel, the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 5 that at 130 years of age, Adam and Eve fathered Seth. They gave life, they gave birth to Seth. And it's in an interesting way. You know, I asked that question, have you ever felt overlooked? I wonder sometimes if Seth felt overlooked. Because guess what Seth means in Hebrew? It means substitute. Can you imagine the burden of living your life with a name that was translated to mean substitute? You're not the firstborn. You're not the secondborn who was killed by the firstborn, but you are a substitute. You are a substitute. And Seth had to live with that all of his life, with this label of being a substitute. He's not the firstborn, he's not the secondborn, but he is a substitute for one who was chosen by God. And so I want to talk about that a little bit for a few minutes today. This business of Seth, S-E-T-H, being a substitute son. Seth grows up knowing that he is a substitute, and if he had any doubt about it, his name is a reminder. Number 2, Seth is the new joy of his mother and father. His parents and the Lord were very pleased with Abel. And we don't know what went on between Abel and Cain, why Cain felt it was so important to kill Abel. And the one he's really mad at is God, because God liked the offering He thought God liked the offering of Abel more than his. But in the case of Seth, Seth is born when his father is 130 years of age. I assume Eve is about that age too. And modern science could learn a lot from Adam and Eve, how they're producing children at 130. But the other thing about Seth, and I'm not going to go through the genealogies right now, but you can read it for yourself, Genesis chapter 5, is that Seth began producing a lot of children. And Seth lived to be, 900 or so years of age. Adam lived about the same amount of time. And so Seth, Adam and Eve lived good lives well into their old age. And they are picking up the pieces after Cain has robbed them of their joy. Cain, in killing Abel, on the one hand, is in his frustration, is really angry at God. But in his anger to God, Cain has robbed his mother and his father of their joy. And sometimes in life, I bet you there's somebody looking at this today who can say, my son or my daughter has robbed me of my joy. If you have a son or a daughter who's drug addicted, I know somebody looking at this right now knows what I'm talking about. We have one in my family. If you have a drug addicted son or daughter, that is a way to rob you of your joy. And I don't think the child intends to rob the parent of their joy, but believe me, that's a joy robber. There are people who will rob you of your joy because they can't get their life together. If they have these mood swings, if they sometimes, maybe somebody looking at this has experienced a child who really, if you're not careful, they will rob you of your money. I know some families who have to lock the bedroom. They have to lock their valuables because a family member might steal them. When a person is drug addicted, very often they will steal from their loved ones before they choose to rob somebody in the street. And so when somebody does this, they are what I call a joy robber. They rob you of your joy. And the joy robber comes in different ways. Sometimes the joy robber is the person who you have to work with, the boss, the supervisor, a coworker who's full of negativity. That's a joy robber. A person asked me once in good conscience, an engineer at one of our companies here, and said, Reverend, I want you to tell me, how can I maintain my faith when my boss wants me to fudge the numbers? And that was something I had never thought about before. When your supervisor, when your boss asks you to write a report that's either better or worse than what's really the case. And for that person, she felt like the boss was robbing her of her joy. If you live with people who are negative, they can, with a negative spirit, they can rob you of your joy. And life is full of joy robbers. But by the same token, when you come across somebody who is joyful, when you come across somebody who is encouraging, when you come across somebody who's full of life and energy and good news, that is not just a joy seeker, but that's a joy inhibitor, or joy creator. A joyful person can make you joyful. And by the same token, if you are joyful, then you will help somebody else to grow in joy. Joy is one of the spiritual gifts. The Apostle Paul tells us in Galatians chapter 5:22, he says, now the gift of the Holy Spirit are these. And he begins by saying, love is the first one. But guess what the second one is? Is joy. And, some people might ask, why did Paul say this? Why did Paul think that love and joy are spiritual gifts. And what is it about joy in particular that enhances one's spirituality? And I believe it's in part, because if you are a joyful person, you are going to emanate joy to those around you. Now, one of the challenges with joy is to have a joy that's not a soupy, superficial, slapstick kind of joy, but a joy that's genuine, a joy that can find something good in everything. And I tell you, I don't know about you, but I try to look for the good in everything. There's something good, there's something wonderful in every person I've ever met. I don't know if I told you, but I'm a closet photographer. And matter of fact, I have a book of photographs and prayers where, I'll be happy to give it to you if you just give a little support to this ministry. But one of the things I learned as a closet photographer is that there's no such thing as an ugly person. There's no such thing as an ugly person. There's something beautiful in everybody. Yes, there's something beautiful in you. You may not think you're beautiful, but believe me, you are. Even when you look at the high fashion models, if you look close enough, you'll find that in every person, at some point, there's a scar, there will be a blemish, but the really beautiful people, the people who exude being gorgeous and handsome, are the people who figured out how to feel good about themselves, even though they have a scar, even though they have a blemish, even though there's something about them that at face value you might think makes them less than perfect. And if you find a way to present yourself genuinely, to feel good and joyful about life, what you will find is that God will give you more joy. And so in the case of Seth, here's a man who's born and he's named Substitute. Your role in life is you are a substitute for your older brother Abel, who was killed by his older brother Cain. And, for whatever reason, we're not told that Seth lives a bad life. Matter of fact, Seth is a procreator of life. He's bringing numerous children into the world, and the world is populated because of Seth. And so one of the points that I want to make is I want you to be observant when somebody in your house, somebody at your work, somebody in your space is negative. If somebody is negative around you, I want you to think to what you heard today and say, well, Nick Hood said that there's some negative people out there. And that's the first thing. Identify negativity. And then once you find negativity, you have a choice. You can either step back from that negativity, or you can step into the negativity with a commitment that you're not going to allow a negative spirit to make you negative. And if you make that decision, then what you will find is that God will give you the right words. God will give you the right attitude. God will show you the right way. And if you are big enough and courageous enough and faithful enough to walk down a positive path, what you will find is that, like Seth, the Lord will bless you. The Lord will set your feet in a right way. And so in my life, I try to stay away from negativity. In my line of work as a pastor, I can't get away from negativity because there's always somebody who's got their mouth stuck out. There will always be somebody who's a contrarian. You can raise a lot of money in a church and somebody will say it's not enough. You can raise a lot of money at your home. You can bring in a lot of money at your home. And for somebody, it's never, ever enough. And when you run into a person like this, what they're really doing is acting like a joy killer. And what I'm looking for in life is a joy generator. I'm looking for people who are happy. I'm looking for people who can find the goodness of God in the smallest of things. When I see the little bitty ant or a little bitty caterpillar, when I see the inchworm making its way on the ground, I see the handiwork of God. I see the handiwork of God, my friends, in the river. I see the handiwork of God in the sky at night with all the stars arrayed like a canopy over this earth. I see the goodness of God in the poor person who's trying to get their life together. I see the goodness of God in the rich person who realizes that their wealth is not enough to get them into heaven. I see the goodness of God in the eyes of a child when a little child goes to a park and their eyes just open up with amazement and wonderment, and the child begins to dart like a dog on a path, and just with excitement. To me, that just makes me feel so good because I realize that the world is not over. I realize that God still has something more to do with this life. And so for you today, I encourage you to think and pray on being a joy generator, not a joy reducer, but a joy enhancer. And ask yourself, how can I increase somebody else's joy? I went to the drive-through Starbucks one day. I'm not a coffee drinker. And so you may say, but Reverend, why do you go to the Starbucks? I said, well, I go to the Starbucks because my wife loves coffee. And I'm ashamed to say that this year, my wife and I will be 48 years married. And I just learned during the pandemic how much she likes coffee. And I said, Lord, had I known that she got so much joy out of coffee, I would have been getting her coffee our whole marriage. But I went through the Starbucks one day, and as I pulled up to the window, I'd already made my order. When I pulled up to the window, the cashier said, I said, how much? And the cashier said, the car in front of you paid your bill. And I just thought about that. I said, what a nice thing for somebody to do. I didn't ask for that, but they made my day. And we're not talking about a whole lot of money. It's just a cup of coffee. But the person thought it was important enough to pass on the blessing to me. And so I just encourage you today if the Lord has blessed you in some way, pass it on. If the Lord has touched you in some way, pass it on. If the Lord has healed you, if the Lord has strengthened you, if the Lord has shown you an awareness that you did not have, I encourage you right now to think about, how can I pass on this blessing to somebody else? I don't know about you, but every day of life, I'm just trying to pass it on. Every day in life, I'm trying to bring good news and hope to the hopeless. I'm trying to bring energy and excitement to those who have become dull and routine. I, in my life, am trying to be positive to those who are being negative. I try to be straightforward to those who are being cheating and conniving and deceitful and underhanded and backbiting. In my own way, I'm just trying to pass it on because I know that one day it'll all be over. I know that one day I will not be standing in this place. I know that the day is coming when I will meet my Maker. And when I meet my Maker, I want the Lord to smile at me and say, welcome, Nick Hood. You've been faithful over a few things. Now enter into the joy of thy salvation. You tried to be joyful in this life. Now I'm going to give you eternal joy. You've tried to be loving in this life. Now I'm going to give you eternal love. You tried to be strengthening in this life. Now I'm taking you to a place where you won't have to worry about exercise. You won't have to worry about diet. You won't have to worry about all the little things you worry about in this life, because I have something better for you. My friends, I thank you so much for being with me today on this program. And I want you to stick around. I'll be back in a minute, and we're going to talk a little bit more about being a joy seeker, a joy sharer, and not a joy robber. Stick around and thank you so much.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because of course you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Today I've been talking about Seth, the little known, the little talked about son of Adam and Eve, the third son. And I hope for those of you who watched the first part of this program that you learned something that maybe you weren't aware of, that Seth plays an important part in the creation of humankind. And the point where I left off in the first segment is that Cain, by killing Abel, really robbed his mother and his father of their joy. And I don't know if there's anybody looking at this program today who's ever felt like a child has robbed you of your joy. I know grandparents who've been robbed of their joy, and they end up having to take care and raise their grandchildren. Now, don't get it wrong. Part of the reason why they do that is they love their grandchildren, and they would do anything for their grandchild. But it's really unfair, in my opinion, for a son or daughter to be so consumed with their lives that they put the burden of child raising on their parents. To me, those are unwittingly joy robbers. The person who breaks into your home, the person who attacks you personally is a joy robber. And Jesus wants us to be joy generators, not joy robbers. In terms of joy generators, again, I want to thank some of the people who've been so supportive of this ministry. I thank Jacqueline and Lorimer Wyatt, Delgenia Barber. They are actually supporting this ministry every month. And if you're watching today, Delgenia, or Lorimer, or Jackie, thank you. I want to thank Dr. Adanika Nunu, Renee Turner Bailey, Attorney Rita White. These three have given major support to this ministry. I'd also like to thank Phyllis Tony out there in Los Angeles, California. She's a recent widow. Her husband, Kevin Tony, just died. But Kevin and I grew up together, and Kevin and Phyllis have been regular supporters every month of this program. Deborah McIntosh down in Mobile, Alabama, Miss Barbara Allen in Longview, Texas, and there are many others. I'm drawing a blank on some of the names right now. I should have brought my list with me today, and next week I'll do that. But I really want to thank those of you who are supporting this ministry. And if you have not given support, financial support yet, I want you to think about it. I want you to pray on it. I need your support. And I love your support. And one of the most encouraging things to me is the support I've received from the people who I've just named: Josephine Austin, Huel Perkins, and many, many others. My supporter in Niles, Michigan, I thank you. The lady in Chicago, I thank you. The ladies in New York, I thank you. And because really, for me, at the beginning, this is still, I call it the beginning of this ministry. My wife says I shouldn't call it the beginning. She says, Nick, you've been doing it a year now. It's no longer new. I said, believe me, Denise, for me is new. But one of the most exciting aspects of what I do is just hearing from people and hearing from people around the country. I thank you. There are also other ways you can plug into this ministry. Part of the reason why I'm doing this ministry in this fashion is I felt for some years that many of the televangelists are not really speaking from the kind of perspective that I have. And I'm not here to put anybody down, but all I'm saying is I don't hear a lot of people on the Word Network like me. I have a gospel where I'm not preaching hellfire and damnation. I'm not a joy robber. I'm a joy generator. And I believe the Lord has chosen me to bring good news to you and even you and you. I believe the Lord wants me to bring the world closer to Jesus and the love of Jesus by teaching the words of Jesus from a perspective that humanizes every man, every woman, that equalizes every child, every adult, and binds us closer together because of the love and the sacrifice of Jesus, because of Jesus' willingness to die on a cross, that you and I might have life everlasting. My friends, that's mighty good news. I don't know about you, but my life has not been perfect, but I'm so grateful that we serve a living God who loved us enough to die so that our joy might be perpetuated and generated for thousands of years to come until the end of eternity. So thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you'll tune in next week, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, 1:30 Central Time, and 12:30, what's that, Western Time, Pacific Time. I look forward to seeing you. God bless, God keep you, and remember, I'm praying for you.
Thank you for watching today's program. We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
The point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word.